Now, I'm not gonna lie. Ian Wave, when we first looked at this card, and when I first looked at this card, I read it and I tested it out and everything, and it was, my first impression, just like yours, a lot of you, it's alright. It's alright, And we asked, we asked Konami, why couldn't we have just gotten Ian Shuffle over Ian, along with Ian Wave? That would have been awesome if we could get them both together so we can do more testing. But I just found out that this card is mandatory in Neos.
D-Time! Neos Power!
It's Michael Bowden back again, aka Destiny Hero Mike, your host, and welcome back to D-Time! Hey baby, it's always D-Time, and in more ways than one. And yes, I just want to give a big shout out, big thank you to my growing sub count. And also, if you have not commented for this mat, look at this mat and sleeve giveaway. In my short, I have a YouTube short, just really briefly. I have a YouTube short. I'm giving away this mat, and the mat is still in the box, by the way. It's still boxed. And these sleeves, 50 count Miracle Fusion sleeves. So I choose a winner next week. I'm going to let it roll on throughout the weekend. So give it some more time to rotate. And all you have to do is like, comment, and subscribe in that short. And throughout the comments, sometime next week, I will select a winner. So, and I will give you the instructions on how to enter. So yes. So big shout out to you guys. Thanks for subscribing, as well as thank you so much for the channel membership. You guys are great. Thanks for helping support this channel. I really appreciate you guys. Now let's get into it. Ian Wave. Like I said in my intro, when I first read this card and when I first tested it, it just was like right? It was just meh. But to be sure, let's go over it. It says if. So if is good, that means it doesn't miss timing. If your elemental hero monster is used for a fusion, summon and sent to the graveyard or banished, except for during the damage step, you can then summon a Neospatian monster or elemental hero Neo specifically from the deck. Now this is the most important part of the effect. When I first read that, because I'm going to break this card down and I'm going to plead my case as to why this card is at least a 2 of in the Neos build. And I've got the math down too for you guys, but that first effect is very important. When I first read it, I was like, dang, how come it could have been any hero? Like, how come we could not have brought out a Spirit of Neos? That's what I thought about. But I realized that would make the card even more OP than what it already is. Yes, this card is low-key OP. Before I get to my examples, this card is low-key OP. But because of that effect, but not for the reason that you think. So, because you're like, yo, okay, what is it? It doesn't even seem spectacular. Hold on, we're gonna get to it. And then the remainder of the effect is if again, it never misses timing. If a Neospatian or Neos, vanilla Neos that I control or in the graveyard is shuffled back into the deck or extra deck, we can special summon an elemental hero from the graveyard, aka Stratos or the Spirit of Neos. But that's good. That's good and fine. But again, we want to bring it back to the first effect. Now this card works in levels. It's a dual. It works. This card works overtime. It works in levels of play, especially in today's meta and what's going on and what cards, which we're going to get to it, and what card choice people are playing in terms of board breakers, why this card is very important. But the first one, okay, level 1 is this card ties all the elemental heroes and the Neospatians together. First of all, it just ties them together, makes things more consistent, and this card is the reason why possibly we don't have to play all the Neospatians. We don't have to play all 6 because this card grants consistency. And some might argue, well, yeah, but if you summon a Neospatian off of this, you're now going to be cut off from the Infernal Divisor. But I argue Yeah, so if you summon a Neospatian, you'll be cut off from the Infernal Divisor. But see, my argument is if you do that, really briefly, let me find it. So if you know you need to go into Infernal Divisor, you bring out Neos instead. Remember, it allows you to bring out a Neos too as well. So it's a hero. But back to what I was saying, it allows you. So just so that if you're like skeptical about like the visor confliction, don't worry. You can bring out Neos as well and still get your materials and stuff like that. So you can bring out Neos instead, for example. But the math behind this card is you have the first reason, back to what I was saying, you got 3 emergency calls. Okay? You have 3 emergency calls, 3 A hero lives. The importance of this card is because these guys go into your Blazemen, okay? These two, you see the engine behind that? So you have 3 A hero lives, 3 emergency call, and you have 2 polymerization in the deck. But that also, this is essentially your third, it's a third polymerization plus a body. So the Blazeman is gonna always, these are gonna always synergize. They're gonna always tie each other together. Everything gets tied together. That's the first thing, okay? On a surface level, okay, of functionality. This card, it can't even be a brick. There's just no way this card could brick with these ratios. And your one Blazeman. The Blazeman again glues now you're getting more value out of your Blazeman, okay? With whatever option, if you want to bring out a Neos, a free big Neos, and do what you want to do with that, or a Neospatian if you don't need to go into the Inferno Divisor. Say you got enough Neospatians, you don't need to go into Inferno Divisor all the time. So that's something to keep in mind, and you can just bring out that last Neospatian that you need for your combo piece. Alright? Now that's the first layer to it, alright? The second layer to it is it has a synergy with the instant contact, okay? Now, the instant contact drawback effect is if you don't already have a Neos, it'll go back to the deck, okay? Now Ian Wave triggers, and if you have a Spirit of Neos in the graveyard, you can summon it from the graveyard and get your setup. And you have a body on the field, which is not bad, not bad. Then as well, aside from the Spirit of Neos, favorite contact, you have your setup, you get even more follow-up, so chances are there's a pretty high chance that you already used your Stratos that was in the graveyard that turn when you set up with the favorite contact. So you bring back a free Stratos, which the Stratos goes to tutor you a Spirit of Neos. Safe to say, if they do get a battle phase, the battle phase will be at a big disadvantage, and your Spirit of Neos will do things, you know. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And also another thing about Ian Wave and Ian Contact, the Ian Wave helps synergize out helps bring out your nails a lot easier from the deck, and which basically it'll turn on your instant contact. So whatever, like for example, OG Neos fusion that you bring out, it's going to be live. It's going to be more consistently live under the instant contact, and also if it goes when the Neospatian itself goes back. When the Neos fusion itself goes back mandatory, the Ian Wave will summon you a hero. So we'll summon you something from the deck. So the Ian Wave turns on the instant contact, which the Neospatian or the Neos fusion is going to turn on the. If it does go back, it's gonna turn by itself. It's gonna turn on the Ian Wave's graveyard effect. So that these two alone synergize very well, and you can summon any one of the 6 original Neos fusions and utilize them against the opponent, no problem and no fear. That's level 2. Okay, so are you guys ready for level 3, which is what's according to the thumbnail? Level 3 is, before we get into that, because this is the first part of level 3. This is how deep this card is. Now, obviously, Ian Wave combos with Ian Shuffle, but because we don't have Ian Shuffle, I'm not going to talk too much about Ian Shuffle. But Neos Fusion, you activate Ian Wave and you activate Neos Fusion. Ian Wave is not going to go off, but that's okay. And usually when we bring out our Brave Neos, this card is not going to go off. But usually when we Neos Fusion, we bring out our Brave Neos. And then our Brave Neos is protected, right? Our Brave Neos is protected. And what's the most common way that our Brave Neos leaves the field? Is it destruction? Is it battle? Is it banishment? No, it's actually a super polymerization. You know, he's a fusion. So if they have a dark, or if we have another, monster on the field or something like that, he gets super polyed away very easily for the Garua. Okay? And what happens is, if they super poly us, Ian Wave goes off. So they send him to the graveyard, then that will then trigger the Ian Wave, and we get a body from the deck. We get a Neos from the deck. So no other deck gets to do that. No other deck gets that kind of interruption. The only thing they're going to be able to bring out against us, they cannot bring out the Dracos Tapalia. They can only bring out the Garua. They're only able to bring out the Garua when they super poly us. Because, most likely, because it's 2 light warriors on the field, for example. Like another common inboard for this deck. Another very common inboard for this deck is something like a Sunrise and a Brave Neos. That's also a common inboard. So these 2 alone are super poly targets. So they super poly us away or whatever for their Garua, and Wave goes off, boom, the Garua can't get over the Neos. So yeah. And that's just insane to me. The fact that, or vice versa. Another thing, if we super poly them using our fusion plus something else to bring out like our own Dracos Tapalia, this will go off. Yes, it will. It'll go off and bring us a free big body Neos, or like I said, or a Neospatian if you want. But yeah, so I argue that this card is at least a 2 of, because this is the only deck that has some kind of recovery from a super poly. I never see this card is a spell speed 4, and it just doesn't care what you brought out. It's gonna absorb it and it's gone. It's like worse than being tributed. A lot of things don't even trigger off of super poly, but Ian Wave does, and it keeps us from dying, and it gives us a big body on the board that they have to use resources on. And then if they want to bounce it, for example, something like a Kaleido Heart, they want to bounce what we bring out like a Kaleido Heart, they're going to have to hit the Ian Wave and still keep our monster on board. Because if they hit the Neos, well, that triggers a hero to come back from the graveyard. So, and this says, whatever may or may not be in our graveyard. So yeah, that's another thing. If something gets bounced back, and like I said already, we've got our favorite contact. So that is definitely something to consider. And also, it could just, like I said, back to level 1, it just adds consistency to the rest of the Neospatians, and it helps your Blaze Man get more value. So this card is really something to consider. I will be testing it before I enter my next tournament, but I will be testing this card. This card is wild. And one more tip: when you're going second, when you're going second, and your opponent, you suspect your opponent has a set super poly, you just activate this first. So here's okay, this is level 5. This is unofficially level 5. When you're going second, your opponent has a super poly set, and you're going second, activate Ian Wave first before you start your combos. Now you don't have anything to worry about if your E-Hero gets absorbed for the super poly on your turn going second. Now you get a free Neos from the deck if they do that. So for whatever it is they're going to bring out, they're not going to bring out a Dracos Tapalia because everything is light in this deck. So usually it's just going to be the Garua. Garua is not a threat, not immediately. So this card even going second is a threat to polymerization, to super polymerization, which they have to spend resources to use. They have to discard a card from hand. Meanwhile, we gain advantage. Think about the numbers. They go, I wouldn't call it minus, but they could go minus depending, but we still advantage if you think about it while we're in a mid combo. So it protects us. It protects us from super. We recover from super poly. We gain advantage from super poly. I mean, basically from the opponent's super poly. So that is something to think about, guys. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I just came up with this last night. I just doing some more theory crafting, and I will be doing some testing over the weekend. And I appreciate you guys, and you guys be good to yourselves.